Chapter 6. Each memory that is communicated in these books unlocks remembrances in your energy fields. We remind you at this time because we move deeper into transformation and the truths that have been hidden for too long. We are aware of the consequences that Book 2 and 3 will have on humanity and the unraveling at play. Now is the time for this awareness to come forward. You are ready if you are listening to this book, and humanity is prepared as a whole. Ishtar and the Three Pendants. In the land of Syria, there was a boy named Ishtar. Ishtar was a young shepherd many centuries ago. On one of his many days of being alone among his sheep, he discovered a small cave in the hills where he roamed. Not wanting to leave his sheep unattended for too long, he took a brief glance in. To his surprise, he saw that it was well lit and had an inviting room with Arabic rugs and delicious smelling food awaiting on a table, and it was all for him. There were many days and nights that Ishtar had gone hungry through his years, as his family was poor. All they had was their flock of sheep. His mother and sisters were very devout to their religion, and any small income that they would make as a family went to the church. In this cave of light, Ishtar began to wonder if this was a dream, and if he was imagining this whole thing before his eyes. That is when an energy being of light began to manifest before him. This formation of energy began to take the shape of a human female. She was in a white dress and had a white scarf over her head. She glowed with a white golden light, and immediately Ishtar felt at ease. She was the goddess of peace, and had come through the realms to assist Ishtar, for he was chosen. Ishtar was the chosen one, for he had a heart of purity. He could see through the deception of others and the falsehoods of the church. Ishtar loved his family very much. He would never speak of the truths that he saw, for he felt if he did speak of this, he would be an outcast from his family. So all of these years as a young child and boy, he kept silent, enjoying the time with his mother and sisters, and closing himself off when they went to church. Ishtar was at a loss for words when the goddess began to speak. Ishtar, it is a great honor to be here with you. I am the goddess of peace, and have traveled far and wide to be here with you today. I offer you gifts of food, warmth, and light to help you on your journey. I ask you, Ishtar, to sit with me for a moment. I am here to show the mission that lies before you and how important you are at this moment in time. Each gift that you see will help your soul heal and move forward at the task at hand. The food that is before you will keep your belly full on the days and nights that are not your own, when you are not able to eat for days at a time. The carpet underneath your feet will now provide your body a layer of warmth and protection from the elements in the coming days and weeks. The light that you see in this space now enters your heart and will light your path ahead. As I speak, please know I am also watching over your flock. They are safe and protected while you are with me. Ishtar was reeling with this information. His mind was telling him this was a dream, a figment of his imagination, and yet, in his heart, he felt calm, loved, taken care of, and seen. He could feel this goddess look into his heart and soul, something that he had never experienced in his life. For another to truly see into their being and be accepted is truly a gift indeed. Ishtar moved forward and his feet touched the rugs. he could feel a layer of warmth move over his body. An invisible shield now surrounding him wherever he went. As Ishtar sat down, he began to eat. He could not hold back any longer, for he had never seen food like this. Still hot and steaming, the smells of the most mouth-watering food lay out before him. Once the food touched Ishtar's mouth, he couldn't help but moan in gratitude for this delicious food. The goddess watched him, smiling a soft smile, for she knew of the hardships Ishtar had gone through. Ishtar continued to eat and was mindful, for he knew that when you ate too much at once, after not eating for a long time, you could get sick. He took his time eating slowly and eating only small bites at a time. Ishtar could also feel he was beginning to be full after only a few mouth-watering bites. What the goddess said is true. He felt full. His body was protected and shielded in warmth, and his awareness grew. He could now feel the light in his heart grow. Immense love was felt in his entire being. He felt the heart of the universe, the very beginning of time itself. He was his own creator, and instantly he was one with everything. At that moment, Ishtar and the goddess were in another realm. They were energy, with no physical vessels. They were their true divine essences. The goddess spoke to Ishtar once more. "Welcome home, Ishkakunana. You now know why I came to see you. You can see all and know all in your heart. This version of you will integrate with your Ishtar human after we speak, and there will be pieces of wisdom that will come through to help you in the moments that you need them the most. The task at hand is to seed your light and knowledge where you are located. There will be great strife in this area and in the centuries to come. The seeding is needed now, for when the time is right, the light will melt the darkness away from these lands. Peace will be once more. Ishkakunana, your soul family, and I will guide you on how this will happen. Know you have a limited time, for once you begin to seed the light, the darkness will feel this and be upon you. Fear not, for your task will be complete by the time they discover you. This will be so." The two energies, the goddess and Ishkakunana, embraced, and as they let go, Ishtar woke up alone, outside of the cave, with one of his sheep licking his face. The cave was no longer. A rock face had taken its place. Ishtar knew he had the option to ignore the vision and experience. However, there was no denying the pull in his heart to lead him on. He could still feel the warmth around his body from touching the rugs, and knew his belly would be full in the days ahead. Ishtar took a moment to sit on the hill and reassess what had just happened. He watched his sheep and needed time to absorb the enormity of the situation. Ishtar knew it was trust that would take him to his next step and what he was meant to do. As Ishtar stared out at the landscape before him, another vision came forward. This vision was one of panic, fear, fighting, and violence. He blinked his eyes and was scrambling away from what he saw. Grief overtook Ishtar, for he saw his people, his land, in terror for years. As the vision faded, he knew he had to move ahead and would fully commit to his mission. He stood up and took a breath. Ishtar stayed there for a while, breathing and absorbing all that had happened so far with the goddess and this recent vision. Ishtar dusted himself off, and began to walk down the hill. With each step, he began to feel lighter and then started to walk with a skip in his step. Ishtar knew this layer of light that was around him was helping his energy move out of fear into a higher vibration. For it was time now to tell his mother and sisters what happened and the truth of what he's seen. No longer could he hide behind the falsehoods and the secrets of others. Light filled Ishtar's entire heart. He felt he was shining from the outside in and the inside out. When Ishtar arrived home and his flock was safe and sound, he found his sisters and mother around the hearth. Life was difficult at this time. There was little to eat and happiness was fleeting. He sat down near the fire and asked his family to listen with an open heart and mind before coming to a conclusion. He was going to start at the very beginning when he remembered as a baby the sights, sounds, and colors he would see around others when they would be happy, sad, angry, or deceitful. He continued with his words of truth, having to keep quiet throughout the years. For fear of losing his family when he began to see the lies of the church, the illusion of faith and deceit. His mother and sisters began to weep silently as Ishtar began to share his experience with the goddess. His family could feel a shield of protection of warmth around Ishtar, and at times could see a soft glow around him. There was no denying the truth that Ishtar spoke of, and his mother and sisters reached out to him and held Ishtar when his story was complete. They made the decision wholeheartedly to stand by Ishtar no matter the cost. They knew in their hearts to support their brave son and brother. The women also knew instinctively that higher magic and power were at hand. They could not support Ishtar. They knew this in their hearts and asked what the next step was. Ishtar knew in his dreams that night that the goddess and others would come to him, providing him with insight on how to seek the light. As evening fell, Ishtar's sisters and mother surrounded him while they slept, his shield of warmth covering them as they all slept peacefully, even with the uncertain outcome ahead of them. Ishtar was correct. As soon as his eyes closed and his breathing became even and deep, he was in the same place that the goddess of peace had taken him before. This time, there was a seated council before him. Again, no one had physical bodies. Each soul was the essence of light and energy. The council surrounded Ishtar and spoke to him telepathically. Ishkakunana, we are happy you have joined us. The task at hand is great and must be completed quickly. You are to take 3 golden pendants with you on this day, and these will be placed on 3 people of honor over the coming weeks. You will know in your heart when you come across each soul that will bear this gift of light. This is how the seeding of light in this way will be done. Each golden pendant has the capacity to emit a high enough frequency to change the vibration of others while this pendant is on the chosen one. You will have to travel great and far. You will have no need for food, warmth, or light, for the goddess has bestowed these gifts to you while you complete your mission. Your family will be provided for with the sale of the flock, and they will move in the night to another town far away to start anew for their safety. Once you have set them off to sail, you will not see them again in this lifetime. The council member that had been speaking to Ishkakunana stood and floated forwards. Within the light being's energetic hands were 3 golden pendants, that were humming in vibration with an incredibly high frequency. The council member placed the pendants in Ishkukunana's hands and surrounded them with their hands. The Light Council member then moved both of their hands over Ishkukunana's heart. "Thank you, Ishkukunana. Thank you." Bowing down deeply. In an instant, Ishtar woke up with a jolted breath, finding 3 shining golden pendants in his lap. His mother and sisters were fast asleep, and he knew at once what he had to do. Ishtar quietly began packing a few light items for his trip: charcoal, a blanket to lay on, and an extra piece of cloth to wrap the charcoal in. He placed all 3 pendants over his neck and hid them underneath his shirt. He quietly woke his mother and sisters and told them what was to come. They were to pack immediately in 5 minutes' time and head south until they reached the sea. There they would find a boat and a captain that would take them to Africa to begin anew. Ishtar would meet his family at the sea before they set sail to give them the funds for the sale of their sheep. Ishtar also knew and felt in his heart that he would meet the first soul to bear the pendant of light on his way. His sisters and mother rushed to gather a few belongings. They said their temporary goodbyes with Ishtar until they would meet him again in a few days. The women knew how to get to the sea, and they had each other to guide and support one another along the way. Ishtar gathered the flock and began to walk away from the village that he had known his entire life. Feelings and memories flowed through him, and with that, he let it all go. In his heart, he knew he must let go of the old for the new to come in. He focused on the task at hand and what lay before him. Carrying the 3 golden pendants, he began to feel superior, wise, and knowledgeable. He was starting to merge Ishkukunana with Ishtar. His body began to change. With every breath and step that he took, he was becoming stronger, lighter, and taller. He could feel an incredible speed and energy thrumming in his veins. As dawn approached, Ishtar and his sheep were in another town, and Ishtar had changed just enough in height and muscle tone that no one would recognize him. He sold his flock to a nearby man in the market, who was in need of another herd, and gave Ishtar the price that he was looking for. Once again, Ishtar was on his way. This time, he would proceed at a much quicker pace, knowing he had to find the first person to give the pendant to and to give the funds to his family in only a matter of a few days. Ishtar and Ishkukunana were now completing the final stages of their emergence, and once complete, would be called Ishka. Ishka awoke to the stars above him and the sound of the crashing sea. He vaguely remembered walking and running for the past 2 days to get to the specific spot where his heart had led him to. He collapsed in exhaustion once reaching the waters and drifted off to sleep just as he felt one of the pendants began to vibrate intensely. When awakening, Ishka felt a renewal in his body after sleeping. The sea air cleansed his lungs and the spray wiped away all the grime and dirt from his travels. The golden pendant that was vibrating started to lead him into the waters. Ishka did not hesitate. Once Ishka was waist deep in the sea, the pendant lifted off of his chest and drew him to a cliffside. Ishka could not reach this cliffside by land. It was only through the waters that one could begin to see a cave, a hollowing in the rock. Ishka made it to the jagged rocks and slowly began to climb the slippery, algae-covered boulders, taking his time. The pendant was now just pulling Ishka to this cave, and when he got to the opening, dripping from the waist down, he could see that someone was inside. Ishka was damp, wet, and yet surprisingly not cold, for he continued to feel the warmth from the shield of protection around him. As he entered the cave, he began calling out, "Hello, is anyone here? I mean you no harm." That is when a young woman stepped out. She had a small table and chair at the back of the cave, with a makeshift bed at the side. She even had a small stove and fire burning inside to keep her warm. When Ishka drew his eyes to hers, the pendant led him to her. Ishka took off the golden pendant and said, "I think this belongs to you." The young dark-haired woman could hardly believe her eyes, for she had continual visions over these past few weeks of this happening. She began to think that she was losing her mind, for over and over this vision played in her mind, of a young man gifting her a golden pendant, and she could see the energy, the golden light that would radiate out from this pendant. She could see that wherever she went, this necklace would shift the energies of those around her. Olea held open her hand, and Ishka placed the pendant in her palm and closed her fingers over the necklace. He looked into her eyes and said, "Thank you, Olea." Ishka knew things now that he could not explain. He knew this young woman's name before she mentioned it, and he knew that he would have a brief visit with her, calming her senses before he went away again to find his mother and sisters. It was in a second of time that he would sense and know what would happen. Olea asked Ishka to sit and asked, "How did this come to be? How did you know I existed and was here? How was I a chosen one?" Ishka began with his shortened tale of the goddess and explained that there are certain things that the mind cannot understand, for it is through feeling and allowing the senses to guide you through your heart that you will know the truth and what is real before you. For this is the way forward for humans now, to feel through your heart and your energy. Be aware of the distractions around you that are made to dumb down your senses and your gifts. They both sat in silence for a moment, with their own thoughts. Ishka knowing it was time to go, as the two other pendants had started to vibrate, reminding him of his mission. Ishka stood and bowed down to Olea, thanking her once again for her light-filled role and for the kind welcoming she had given him. Olea had so many questions swimming through her mind, and yet she knew it was time to let go and trust what will be shown to her in due course. She silenced her thoughts and said farewell to Ishka, as he had an urgency that surrounded him and his mission. Olea showed him an easier way through the rocks and another path that would lead him quickly to the shore. They said their farewells, and Olea knew she would never see Ishka again. When Ishka was no longer in her eyesight, she studied the golden pendant in her hands. There were symbols and intricate designs that she knew held knowledge and activated energy. She lifted the golden pendant to the firelight from the stove and knew it was time to place the pendant over her head and onto her body. As she did this, magnificent threads of glowing golden light surrounded her and began to talk to her. This was the activation of the pendant that was made just for her. Her little cave lit up, full of warmth, sunshine, and promise. Promise for a new day ahead, one of hope and change. Olea knew in her heart this would not happen overnight or even in the years to come. But a change would come and help those that seek a better world, one of peace, balance, and freedom. Olea knew she was to leave her sweet cave that had given her refuge for so many years, to move into the world, traveling to where the pendant would lead her. She knew this information to be true. Olea trusted she would be given refuge when needed and be provided for when she was hungry and cold. For women in this time period, traveling alone was not wise. Many men sought out women to do harm and use them to their own accord. Olea trusted the mission that unfolded in front of her, gathered the few belongings that she had, and with a bit of food, set off to where her pendant led her. Ishtar was on the road once again, with an urgency in his step. He knew the way to the boat that would take his sisters and mother to Africa. Ishtar also felt in his heart it was Egypt where the next pendant would lead him. With mindful, quickened steps, he made it in less than a day to where his family was located. After a happy reunion between Ishtar, his mother, and his sisters, their hearts soon became heavy with the knowledge this would be their final farewell. Ishtar gathered his mother and sisters and told them of the great strength and fortitude they would have to have in the weeks ahead on their journey. Once the boat anchored and their feet would touch the sand at their new destination, they would be safe. It was now up to the women in his family to take care of each other without him. Ishtar gave his mother the funds from the sale of their sheep. Ishtar's mother knew this would buy herself and her daughters a small home with a few animals to tend to. His mother and sisters wrapped Ishtar in one last embrace, startled once again at Ishtar's shield that enveloped them all with warmth and light. Each sister could feel the pendants vibrate from underneath Ishtar's shirt. Ishtar let them go and talked to the captain of the boat. He knew in his heart they would have a safe passage. Ishtar paid the fare for his family and watched them climb aboard. The boat was now ready to take to the sea, and Ishtar made sure his feet were firmly planted on the dock that day, as he could have been easily swayed to go with them. Not wanting to lose sight of his family, he watched until the boat was a dot on the horizon. Heavy in his heart, he cried and let them go. Ishtar was grateful for the time he had with his mother and sisters. Even in their hardship, they found ways to console one another. He would think of them often over the next few days, recalling happy memories of the time they had together. The pendants were beginning to hum once more, and the second pendant began to pull Ishtar away from the docks, down a path along the sea. On this journey, Ishtar felt a change in the air. He knew he was being watched. Ishtar repeatedly looked behind himself as he walked. He had the feeling he was being followed. The path along the waters was a beautiful one. There was much to take in with one's eyes. Birds were flying and fish were jumping out of the sea. The air smelled fresh and clean, and Ishtar was feeling the heaviness in his heart lift little by little. It took Ishtar 3 days to get to his second pendant's destination in Egypt. The pendant discreetly led him into a busy marketplace where fish, nuts, fruit, and cured meats were sold. This marketplace also held animals in cages and baskets. Swords and knives could be bought, and even masked women in enticing colors were dancing down the way. Having gone through days of solitude, being here for Ishtar was overwhelming to his senses. He continued to follow the lead of the pendant, and it led him down a stone-pathed alleyway to a makeshift door of shredded fabric. Ishtar hesitated. He knew this is where the soon-to-be owner of the pendant was, But how did he proceed without bringing attention to himself and the area? He still felt eyes on him and could not shake the feeling that he was being watched. He quietly poked his head in the side of the fabric door and saw a small family sitting on the floor in prayer. They were sitting in a circle and slowly chanting words ever so quietly in an ancient whisper that felt old and sacred. This was another language that Ishka knew in his heart. This was the language of all that is, light language. And this family was already speaking light into the world. This awakened family would provide the strength and courage this next pendant bearer would need in their coming years. The pendant forcefully led Ishka through the door, right in front of a small boy who was sitting in between his mother and father. Krikuna was the child's name, and he had the most beautiful doe-filled eyes. His eyes were not of this world. When looking into them, you got lost, for you would see your own soul looking back at you. Ishka fell backward, for he had never looked into eyes like this before. The pendant finally became still, and Ishka knew Krikuna was this pendant's rightful owner. Ishka slowly sat up and asked for forgiveness for intruding in such a way, but Krikuna's father held up his hand, motioning for Ishka to join their circle. Krikuna's family opened the circle just enough so that Ishka had room to sit with them. Krikuna's father spoke. "We have been waiting for you, Ishka, and we know that our boy, Krikuna, is one of the bearers of the golden pendants." Krikuna was nodding and smiling. Ishka looked around at each family member and noticed they were all smiling. Joy filled Ishka's heart, for this was a joyous celebration. Krikuna's family was awakened, and they looked at this task with joy and light, not something to fear or with fated resolution. Now smiling, Ishka reached the pendant over his head and placed it in an eager Krikuna's hands. The family scooted all around Krikuna to get a better look, and if on cue, the pendant began to glow, showing signs and light symbols to the bearer and his awakened family. Krikuna placed the pendant over his head, and immediately there was a blast of light that moved through the room, where each person's head whipped back with an energy force that was not expected. The second task was now complete, and Krikuna and his family knew the golden pendant would help spread light into Egypt and their world. Krikuna and his family stood alongside Ishka, blown away at what had just happened. Their experience was made of fables and long-ago myths. To see and feel the energy now, not only with one's own physical eyes, but to feel the effects in and around the body was something their minds had a hard time absorbing. Ishka did not have long before he could feel the final pendant begin to hum and vibrate. Krikuna's family took notice and thanked him for delivering the pendant to Krikuna. Ishka faced Krikuna now and bowed deeply to the boy. "Thank you, Krikuna." Ishka's gaze lifted to the entire family now, and he thanked them all for their service of change and possibility. Krikuna and his family bid Ishka a farewell and embraced him as he walked out of the tattered fabric door. As Ishka walked down the cobbled alleyway, he looked back at his short but amazing time with Krikuna and his family. Ishka was beginning to feel peace in his soul, and he was very aware of the limited time that he had left to deliver the third and final pendant. This pendant was softer in energy and gently pulled Ishka down the alleyway into a hidden doorway. Ishka wondered why the pendant had taken him here. It was as if it were hiding from something, and he soon found out what that was. A group of soldiers in black clothing and large scabbards came running by. If Ishtar would have been standing there only moments ago, he and the pendant would have been taken. The pendant now pulled him with great strength down the alleyway, through the market and towards the sea. Ishtar knew he would be taking a boat to Europe. He didn't exactly know where, just that there was an urgency and the need to run as quickly as he could to the Nile. It took Ishtar a full day and a half to get where he needed to go, to the Nile River. Ishtar would not be alone on this leg of the journey, for the pendant guided him through a marsh to a small raft where an elderly man sat with a long pole by his side. The man's name was Arudis, and was surprised by Ishtar's sudden appearance. Ishtar apologized to the older man for his abrupt greeting. He explained and pleaded that it was urgent for Arudis to take him down the Nile, where Ishtar would then find a boat to take him to Europe. Arudis did not surprise easily by living on the river for most of his life. He had seen many comings and goings of distrust and manipulation throughout his years. However, the Nile gave Arudis sanctuary, peace of mind, and flow of energy in his being. Arudis did not give away his trust easily, but knew in his heart there was truth to Ishtar and his pleas. Ishtar could feel the eyes of someone watching him once again, and was becoming aware that time was running out to find the third bearer of the last pendant. Arudis agreed to take Ishtar down the Nile, but for a price. Arudis needed charcoal to aid him in one of his pain remedies for his legs, and did not have time to find any before their journey. Ishtar was astounded and taken aback. He had carried charcoal in his bag this entire time since leaving his home. He didn't know why he needed it, only that he trusted the nudge and guidance guiding him to do so. Ishtar laughed and laughed, deep belly laughs. He laughed so hard he was crying. He never remembered ever laughing this hard in his life. For it was all so simple. Everything was so simple when you trusted your heart's guidance and moved with the flow. Ishtar took the charcoal out of his bag that was wrapped in cloth and gave it to Arudis. Arudis took the charcoal and rubbed some of the charcoal on his legs. He then took the remainder of the charcoal and mixed it with salt that was in his other hand. He created a black salt, which he then rubbed on his entire body. Arudis said this would provide him the protection from the ones that were watching Ishtar, and he held up the mixture and invited Ishtar to do the same. Ishtar had never heard such a thing, and Arudis said, "This combination of charcoal and salt combines all of the elements of earth, water, fire, earth, and air. A powerful mixture that has been known throughout the centuries. We will start our journey at dusk and travel throughout the night. I know every turn and bend of this river and will guide you to where you need to go." Ishtar could feel the confirmation from the golden pendant with its soft humming vibration through his chest. Ishtar asked about the ones that were watching him, and Arudis spoke quietly. "The ones that I speak of have had a plan all along since coming to our land. They see the ones that hold the light, and take them out before the light spreads knowledge, truth, and awakening to the masses. I could feel your light, Ishtar, before you stepped through the marsh. I know of your mission, and have also been guided by the goddess of peace in my dreams. Many of us have accepted to help in the bigger picture of all that is." Ishtar was silent, and was trying to take in what Arudis was speaking of. Ishtar climbed aboard the small raft, and took the remainder of the black salt from Arudis and put it on his body. Arudis and Ishtar set off at dusk in silence, both in their own thoughts and prayers to the goddess, asking to be kept safe until the final pendant met its owner. Hours passed, and Arudis found he was neither cold nor hot. He could feel a shield of warmth coming from Ishtar, enveloping him as he continued to guide the raft downriver. Ishtar's body had a faint glow that led them the way, and with the camouflage of the charcoal and salt, it looked like a mirage of dimmed, soft light from afar. The sun soon began to rise, and Arudis took them to a small opening within the reeds that would hide them until dusk once again. Ishtar needed to stretch his legs and wash his body. Once Arudis had secured the raft in the reeds, Ishtar jumped down into the water and quietly waded through to the shore. Arudis would soon follow as he was in desperate need of food. Arudis warned Ishtar not to wash his whole body until they made it to the ship. The charcoal and salt provided them both the current protection from the ones that would seek to harm them and eliminate the pendants. The combination of the charcoal and salt was potent and provided yet another shield around Ishtar. The two of them found enough wood to light a small fire, and Ishtar offered Arudis a fish he'd just caught in the river. Ishtar was amazed as he still had no need to eat, and his stomach remained full. Arudis did not ask any questions about why Ishtar did not eat. He knew after seeing the light radiating off of Ishtar and the warmth he felt on the raft that this was not an ordinary human. He knew the goddess of peace and others were helping Ishtar, and at a much faster speed than he had ever seen before. The two of them went back to the raft and slept in the reeds until it was time to venture once more on the river. This would be their last night together before Ishtar would be on board the ship. As if on cue, dusk hit, and Ishtar's body began to slightly glow, showing Arudis the curves and bends of the river. The two remained silent for the rest of the trip, and the pendant underneath Ishtar's shirt began to elevate in vibration. Ahead, Arudis could see the expanse of the sea and wanted to get Ishtar to the ship that he now saw in front of them as soon as possible. The pendant seemed to feel the same way and was also guiding Ishtar with urgency. Ishtar would be a stowaway on the ship, as he needed to rest and did not want any unwanted attention drawn to him. The raft gently bumped into the massive ship, and Ishtar thanked Arudis, bowing down to him deeply. Arudis, you have played an instrumental role in my journey, and the last pendant, thank you. Arudis was not so easily affected by others' words and grand gestures. He was caught off guard when he felt Ishtar's sincerity, and Arudis' eyes filled with tears as they flowed down his face. He did not remember the last time he showed his true emotions to anyone. The two embraced, and as Arudis gently stepped back on the raft, Ishtar was already climbing the side of the boat by a rope that was dangling over the side. Arudis gently pushed the raft off the ship with his pole, and when he looked back, he could see Ishtar waving down at him from atop the ship. Ishtar had tears in his eyes as he said goodbye to Arudis. This burly man had a heart of gold, and he sent him his sincerest wishes that he would settle down with someone where he could find true, heartfelt companionship. Ishtar looked around the deck of the ship behind a crate when he saw the door to the barracks. He wanted to get below deck before the crew started their day. He trusted the pendant wholeheartedly and would wait until the pendant gave him the sign to move ahead. Ishtar waited for only a few more minutes before the pendant started to buzz, and he quietly made his way to the door. And if by some grand design, found his way to the storage room where they held food, water, and barrels of wine. Ishtar lay down behind the barrels and fell fast asleep, and was instantly in front of the Light Council once more. This time the goddess of peace arose from her seat and directed her words to Ishtar. Ishtar, Now is the time to stay hidden and discreet for the duration of your journey. The pendant will lead you to the final bear that holds great power and wisdom within the light. They are chained in a dungeon in one of the castles in Luxembourg. The pendant will guide you there. Do not be alarmed by the people that help you along the way. The call has been made to aid you on your journey. Rest and care must be taken to achieve the task at hand. There will be a great plague that will come across your travels when you are deep in the country. You will be given 3 herbs that you are to inhale in your mouth and nose as you pass through these areas of death. Thyme, oregano, and eucalyptus will aid in your survival. These 3 plants will protect you from this plague. When finding the last bear in the dungeons, you are to provide them with the same antidote that we have given you. That is the only way of survival from the virus for you both. The goddess of peace began to disappear before his eyes, and he woke up to the rocking of the boat. Weeks passed before Ishtar heard the sounds of the gulls and felt the rocking of the boat stop. He decided once again to wait until nightfall to make his way off the ship. Ishtar could not believe his luck as he climbed down from the ship. Not once was he discovered or found out. As he began walking down the docks, Ishtar noticed he was not accustomed to having his land legs back. It would take him a few days for his upright balance to come back to his body. The pendant began pulling Ishtar away from the port-side city. Ishtar also took notice of how the men and women dressed, which was quite unlike his own. He knew if he wanted to not be noticed, he would have to find other clothing. As soon as he had that thought, the pendant took him to the outskirts of town, and Ishtar found men's clothing that looked similar to his own size on a clothesline. He gently pulled them off the line and found a nearby stream to bathe in. Ishtar felt renewed and hopeful, but the lingering words of the goddess of peace entered his mind once more. He didn't know when he would come across the plague and asked the pendant for help. He asked the pendant to guide him to someone that had the herbs the goddess mentioned or to the plants themselves. Eucalyptus did not commonly grow in the areas that Ishtar was in. However, he did intuitively know that thyme and oregano were abundant here. Once Ishtar was on his way again in his new clothes, the pendant gently pulled him down a country lane and stopped in front of a cottage door. This is where Ishtar knew he was going to find the herbs he was looking for. As Ishtar looked up at the cottage, the door opened, and an elderly woman beckoned him to come inside. Aruna was this woman's name, and she had her gray hair tied up in a bun and smelled of lemon and cinnamon. She had tea on the stove and asked Ishtar to sit down. Aruna told Ishtar she had seen the Light Council in her dreams and was asked to help. She asked to hear Ishtar's story, and when he finished, she had all the herbs waiting in front of him on the table, including a bottle of lemon, clove, and cinnamon oils. Aruna told Ishtar this would also aid him against the plague, and to inhale all of these herbs and oils at once, specifically at the nose and mouth, just like the goddess of peace had advised. Aruna told Ishtar to not touch his face during that time, to wrap a cloth around his mouth and nose, and to continue to place these herbs and oils every few hours in and on the cloth. She warned him of the death that he would see, and for him to mentally prepare for the sadness, grief, and despair he was about to enter in the coming days. Aruna said, "Many people will reach out to you and beg for help. You must keep walking and find the one that's in the dungeons. The pendant will know the way." Aruna had set another package of herbs, oils, and cloth waiting in a bag for Ishtar to take with him for the last pendant bearer. Aruna stood and hugged Ishka. Looking him in the eyes, she said, "Ishka, you do us all a great service by finding the three bearers of light and continuing on your mission. You shall complete the mission at hand and find even more than what you were looking for in the end." Aruna bowed down to Ishka and opened her cottage door. It was time for Ishka to go. He gathered the pack that Aruna had made for him and embraced her before he felt the gentle pull and urgency from the pendant to continue on with their journey. Ishka continued with great speed and unstoppable determination. He only stopped for water and the odd rest here and there. He reached Luxembourg in a week's time and was heartbroken at what he found as he entered the city. Smoke filled the air with burning bodies, the stench unbearable. Ishka was already wearing the cloth over his nose and mouth with the herbs and oils in place, and depended on his intuition to remind him when to replenish the herbs and oils in a few hours' time. The castle was easy to find. It was walking through the streets that was crushing Ishka's spirit. Ishka had never seen such loss, as bodies were piled on top of one another on every street corner. Children, adults, the elderly, it did not matter the age. There was just too many. In the middle of the streets, the bodies burned. Ash was in the air, and the sounds of wailing and sobbing were everywhere. Ishka could feel his heart breaking for all of these people. With heavy, slow steps, he continued on until he was at the gates of the castle. The pendant, Ishka knew, could feel his sorrow and led him right through the front gates. There was no one guarding the castle. Ishka wasn't surprised, as there was so much smoke in the air. He didn't know how many people were left in the city. The pendant led him to a side door that then led him down a set of spiral stairs. Ishka began to glow slightly with a change of light as it got darker and darker the further down he went. After the last set of stairs, the pendant led him down a hallway to a cell. When Ishka peered inside, a woman was wearing a cloak that covered her dress and head, and the pendant began to sing. There was an angelic voice that emanated from the pendant, and the astonished woman looked up. She had the clearest, bluest eyes Ishka had ever seen. In response, the woman began to sing the exact tune of the pendant with tears in her eyes. "You came, Ishkakunana. You're really here." The cloaked woman began to stand and walk over to Ishka. Her hands wrapped around the iron bars of the cell. She held out her hand to receive the pendant. Awestruck, Ishka gave her the pendant, and she gently kissed the pendant before placing it over her head. In a flash, the room lit up with blue crystalline light that spilled into the entire city. Snow began to fall and cleanse all in its wake. Ishka looked into her eyes and could see the depths of her soul. Layers of intense shimmering blue looked back at Ishka, letting him know his task was now complete. Oddly enough, Ishka didn't feel in his heart this was the end of his mission. There was a woman in a cell, and the city was full of death. He reached into his pack and gave the woman the cloth of herbs and oils, and advised her to tie it over her nose and mouth. Ishka began to walk down the hallway looking for keys or something that he could open the cell door with, and to his surprise, he heard a click behind him and found that the woman had opened the door on her own. "Ishkakunana, I will explain later. Now we must leave." She grabbed Ishka's hand, their cloths covering their faces, and fled up the stairs to find a man of great size standing in their way. This man had eyes that were not human. He was seething anger and hatred from every cell of his being. Anyone that came in contact with him recoiled from fear and the energy he represented. Ishtar knew this was where he would save the woman's life, for her to complete her mission of spreading and seeding the light with the last pendant. This man of hatred and uncontrollable anger could not believe his prisoner was free. He reached for his sword and began to chant words that held Ishtar in place. Ishtar could see everything this being represented and took from others. There was endless greed and deception that surrounded his entire existence, and Ishtar knew there were others just like him. He knew there was a group that had betrayed their alliance and had taken over this world. The time was at hand for Ishtar to ask for the goddess of peace and the Light Council's help, to help the last bearer of light get away. As the man continued to chant, Ishtar sent out one thought into his heart of pure light for the goddess and council to help. As the sword came down on Ishtar, in a flash, he saw the woman bow down to Ishtar, thanking him for his service through his thoughts, as she disappeared into the snow and ash. Ishtar's energy rose from his slain body that lay still on the ground, and watched the seething man look all around for the woman. Enraged, the man screamed in anger, and vowed he would make it his mission to seek out the bearer of light until her death. Ishtar was grateful that this man did not know about the two others that carried the light as well. Ishtar's energy rose into the clouds and back into the Light Council as they awaited his arrival. Ishtar immediately asked, "How did I make a difference? How did any of this help? There is destruction and great evil that has taken hold of my world. And at what cost? Must others endure trauma and hatred at its core?" Ishtar was sobbing and felt there was no hope or goodwill in sight. He had given up his family, his land, and his life for what? A chance? A very small chance of the pendant succeeding? Ishtar was heartbroken and in complete despair. The goddess of peace went over to Ishtar and surrounded him with waves of soothing energy, and said, "All three bearers will walk and change each area by shifting the frequency. Over time, the people that will have changed from this vibration will bear children that will have more light and awareness in their being, until there is a point where the scales will tip back into balance." Ishtar nodded slightly in understanding as she guided him to another space where he was placed in a pod of light to recuperate and regenerate his being of light. As the goddess left him in peace, she went back to the Light Council, and they began to formulate a plan. The Light Council would watch the light bearers from afar and monitor the difference they would make over the years to come. They also put another plan in place. If there was not enough change by a specific amount of time, they would send out a call throughout the universes. The call would be to all species of the light, near and far, asking for their help and assistance. These volunteers would come in waves as light workers who would bring the balance back between the light and dark on Earth. As time passed, the Light Council watched and saw to their horror each one of the pendant bearers, their families, and all who was changed by the light was taken out from the ones that had taken over. This group had found out about each light source and took them out one by one. The ones that had taken over had upped their game by creating wars on Earth and finding new ways of control through their continued fear that was already perpetrated on the planet. The new way of control was through mind control, technology, food, and even the elements of the earth. The Light Council sent out the call. and the message was heard loud and far throughout the multiverse. They needed thousands of souls to anchor the light, spread the light, and be the light to bring in a fresh new start. To heal the atrocities of the many years of war and death, and the senseless trauma to the souls that were entrenched in karma. The ones that held power knew the right mixture of emotion and traumatic experiences that would hold a soul to the frequency of karma over and over again. This group that has taken over the planet is now coming to an end as thousands of light workers move into their missions and purposes at this time. The story of Ishtar and the three pendants is to show each human the strength and courage it took for one soul to move ahead on their journey, and the collaboration it took for so many others to make this event happen. The bigger picture is to show each human the depths of deception the ones that are ruling your planet have taken to entrench and enslave humanity, and to know there is always hope, light, and guidance that will come forward. Love will always win.